Is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the number one pick in all of fantasy basketball? He was the number one player by totals in all of fantasy basketball this past year. So, should that make him the number one pick? Nah. But the simple fact that we can ask that question without being called completely insane is, I think, a pretty damn good indicator of what Shai is expected to do. And the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder made very few notable changes off a championship roster should give us, I think, a lot of confidence that Shai's going to have another really good year. Welcome, everybody, to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespris. It's Oklahoma City Thunder Day. There is your roster, or part of it, I guess, for those that are watching. You can, nay, I pray that you would, hit the subscribe button, like the video if you're watching on YouTube, rate the show if you're listening on one of the more traditional podcast networks, as we dive into the champions of the NBA who just pretty much ran the table. First place from start to finish this year. And everybody's like, oh, well, you know, they have to go through and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, that's how the playoffs always are. It's a war of attrition. If your best players can actually stay upright, you have a decent shot to actually make it through the playoffs. But let's not worry about that, because this team went 68-14 this past year and just blew everybody right out. Which is why, and I know it sounds insane, from a per game standpoint, a number of Thunder could actually have better seasons if they didn't get to skip 15 to 20 fourth quarters this year. But on the flip side, when we're looking at this from a macro perspective one is, yeah, the regulars could have probably played a few more minutes than they had to. Shai played 34. That was a team high. Jaylen Williams was at 32.5. And nobody else on the team was over 29. Lou Dort was at 29. Some of that was because they had a ton of depth and they used a lot of it during the regular season. Some of it was because they just didn't need to play their horses big minutes nightly every day. Cool. However, it's extremely hard to do it again. And I'm not talking about winning 2 titles in a row, because we know that's hard. It's really hard to have legs for the regular season after a title run. They might get off to a quick start because there's we got to defend our title. Everybody's going to be coming for us. But as soon as you get through that opening stretch and the dog days set in, the reality of how little the regular season matters for a champion team is going to hit these guys like a ton of bricks. It happens to everybody. And they may end up having a good year. Like, this isn't set in stone that the Thunder are going to win, 12 games less or whatever this coming year. And it's not set in stone that guys are going to be extra banged up. It's just that, they put their foot on teams' throats this regular season. This was a club with something to prove from day one until hoisting the trophy. And they did that. And so you get back to the regular season after the grind of the playoffs and then the offseason, and it just doesn't feel as important anymore. And I think you're going to see that manifest in, how the players perform on a night-to-night basis. Let's start by talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And what's coming off an absolutely insane season. He averaged 32.7 points per game, over 2 3-pointers this year for a guy that for a very long time, and you could argue still is, more of a punt threes guy. But there was nothing that you specifically had to punt if you started your team with Shai. And when you consider the fact that he only missed 6 ball games and he was this good, that's how he became the number one player in all of fantasy basketball. But 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.7 steals, a block, 52% high volume from the field, 90% high volume at the free throw line, and only 2.4 turnovers. He was a true 9-cat darling who dominated the fantasy landscape. And we'll tell you more about what we expect from Shai after I remind you all that BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all sports betting action. Baseball is in full swing. We've told you guys that already. But as I've also mentioned, in addition to having news, notes, scores, latest odds, betting info, etc., BetOnline has live in-game betting on everything that's going on right now as we speak. And as I'm recording this podcast, you've got the WTA Washington USA women's singles tennis going on right now. You got soccer. You got, I don't even know what the FISU World University Games are, but you can bet on the women's bracket. I mean, you got to be a serious degen to get in on this stuff if you're sitting in Los Angeles right now. But it's there. So soccer, tennis, UFC, basketball, football, boxing, baseball. It's all there and all live at BetOnline. If that's not your cup of tea, head to the website today. Take advantage of the industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts, plus the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino to boot. BetOnline, the game starts here. So there was no, I mean, Shai was unbelievably consistent, really, from start to finish this year. He started the year great. He finished the year great. There's every reason to believe that he's going to be very, very good again next year. I would, however, caution folks just to say, okay, well, what if this season took a step or two out of Shai? Not permanently, but for the coming year. Like, is he going to be trying to get to 76 regular season ball games again next season? My guess would be no. I think they just wanted to steamroll people. And they did. And they gave him a couple of days off down the stretch, which they should. But I think they're probably going to work in those days off a little bit sooner next year. They don't need him every single day. You don't have to win 68 games. I'm sure they'd love to get the number one seed again, so that's going to creep in there. But as we look up and down the roster right now, and Shai, by all accounts, is probably going to be the consensus number 3 pick in fantasy basketball. So we probably don't have to spend that much time on him because there really isn't anybody else that should jump over him in 9-cat. But just know that this might have been about as good as it gets. And that's okay, because even if it's not quite this awesome, it's still really, really good. And he was the number 1 player by totals anyway. Next player I want to talk about is Jaylen Williams, who was a very popular pick with myself and fans of the podcast and number of the analysts that we had on the podcast that were high on Jaylen. And he mostly lived up to it, but got there in kind of a weird way. He got off to a great start this year. He's a first rounder for like the first month. And then he fell kind of on hard times. He had about 2 months where he was more like a top 60 guy. And then he kind of leveled off and had a more, I don't want to say like benign final 25, 30 games, but he was like a mid-third rounder over that stretch. And it leveled off to kind of end of the second round. Jaylen Williams averaged 21.5 points, so he did take the big leap there. 48% from the field was still good. Free throw at 79 was fine, not awe-inspiring, and down a couple of percentage points from his last 2 years. And a lot of stuff was down a little bit. You know, he didn't shoot the 3 ball as well this season, 37% instead of 43, but 43 always felt maybe perhaps a little bit unsustainable. The 54% from the field, some of that was the 3-pointers, some of it wasn't. So yes, there's perhaps a little bit of room for maybe that to tick up a little bit for Jaylen, but everything else I would assume stays pretty close to the same. The steals were good. They always seemed like they were going to be because he was near the top of the NBA in deflections, and sometimes you just get a little bit lucky or unlucky in that respect. And I think he's probably going to get drafted around where he belongs. Where is that? Late second round. I don't think we need to do a deep dive on Jaylen Williams. I think we kind of know where he's at. I don't think he's about to do a bunch more or less this coming season. And you just maybe hope that the percentages tick up a hair from where they were this year. And that's the upside of him maybe getting into the middle to upper parts of the second round, is if he just shoots the ball better. All right, we moved through Jaylen Williams pretty quick because I wanted to spend more time instead on Chet Holmgren, who you guys know I've talked up on this podcast a few times already this offseason because I think he's due for a terrific post-hype year. We were on Chet on his rookie season, not the year he took off, the rookie season where he actually played, because he has the unicorn big man stat set, which is arguably the easiest stat set to put up 9-cat value, which is blocks, boards, high percentages, low turnovers. Like, It's just easy when you can do those things because it's easier to be, a standard deviation or whatever above the norm. And so his rebounds at 8 per game, that's like almost a standard deviation above the mid marker. His blocks are way above it. It's hard to get that combination of things. But the flip side of it is, okay, where the rare rookie that I was super high on, and it did pan out, I was low on Chet this past year because I thought everybody was going to overclock the improvement. Because we always talk a little bit about second-year jumps. He was kind of in his second year even as a rookie. And the Thunder brought in Isaiah Hartenstein to shore up the big man spot, give Chet Holmgren a little more time at power forward, moves him away from the basket a little bit, decreases the ease of field goal percent try, decreases the number of rebounds available, all those little things. I did not budget into my fade on Holmgren missing 50 ball games. That was something that made his season worse than expected. And so he finished at number 48 because his minutes were sort of artificially pushed down, and they wanted to keep them in check a little bit with Hartenstein around. And that sets us up for this season, which to me is now a season to get back in on Holmgren. Because if you look year over year, his field goal percent was down 4%. His free throw percent was down 4%. His playing time was down 2 minutes per ball game. These are all things that can very easily just sort of equilibrate. And if you're thinking, oh, well, did the shot profile change considerably? He actually, number of three-pointers compared to number of twos, the shots technically should have, and I'm not getting the average distance because maybe the 2-pointers were just harder shots, but percentage of twos versus threes actually went up this past year. So I would expect Chet to see a field goal percent improvement. I would expect the free throw number, I hope, I guess we don't know, free throws are weird, to hopefully tick up a little bit. The other stuff should stay pretty close to the same, but you might also see his minutes jump up by 2 or 3 this coming year without a debilitating injury. And I'm hoping also that his body just kind of withstands the season. So where I expect Holmgren to fall and get drafted more in the 3rd round this year, I think this is the season where we probably see his numbers jump back up into the 2nd round in per game ranking, because he was a 2nd rounder his first year, and that was with almost no changes other than 4% better in both percentages, which led to 1.5 points more per ball game. Everything else was almost exactly the same year over year. He just couldn't shoot this season. And then he got hurt, obviously, and that can play a part in it as you kind of work your way back. But a healthy Chet Holmgren should be able to do what he did the prior year. I mean, look, the Isaiah Hartenstein thing didn't, at least seemingly, didn't impact the rebounding as much as I thought it would. But Chet was number 20 his rookie year, and then fell to 48 because he just couldn't shoot. The weird fluctuations in field goal and free throw percent can have a significant impact on somebody's fantasy value, and I don't want us to overlook that on today's show. So I think Chet can get back into the 20s this year. I would love it if I could draft him in the 30s. I don't know if he's going to fall quite that far with all the high-profile players that are out for the season. But that's the kind of guy that you should be looking at in that range. I think this is going to be a good year for Chet. I think the health comes back, and I'm hoping that we can get him at some kind of discount. Probably not as much as we'd want, but non-zero? How about the other big man on the Thunder, Isaiah Hartenstein, who finished at number 69 this year? Nice. 60 the second half of the season, 52 the final 20 games this year, and number 79 as Chet Holmgren. No, excuse me, number 49, even when Chet Holmgren got worked back into the mix. And you're like, Dan, how the hell did Hartenstein get better as Holmgren came back? And the answer is steals and blocks. And I don't know necessarily that was a byproduct of Holmgren being back, but down the stretch, Hartenstein had a nice run of steals and blocks. He was at 2.4 combined steals and blocks, where over the entirety of the season, he was at 1.9. That's the difference. The other stuff for him, I would even argue maybe got a little bit worse. Over the whole year, he was 11 points and 11 rebounds. Down the stretch, he was 11 points and 9 rebounds. Holmgren being there probably, at least partially, impacted that. Field goal percent is going to be good. Free throw percent is going to be 68 to 72, probably somewhere in that neck of the woods most of the time. You can look at his career. That's pretty much where he's been. If you get a 71 out of Hartenstein, you chalk it up as a win. Field goal percent is going to be around 60. He was at 58 this year. It bounced around, month to month, week to week. But the real key is that Hartenstein is going to get, we figure, somewhere around 25 to 27 minutes per game when Chet Holmgren is healthy. When Holmgren's out, anything could happen. If you look at those months, when was Chet out? Chet was out with like December and January mostly. So we can dig in a little bit on that. I don't remember the exact dates, but let's do a little hunting. Where does this put us? Did Chet play in these games? No, he was out then. Hartenstein was at 30 minutes during that run. Oddly, number 62 because his field goal percent was lower. So there's going to be this sort of bouncing effect with Hartenstein. Field goal percent is going to have a big impact because that's one of his strong categories. You need the steals, the blocks, you need the rebounds. I guess my feeling on Hartenstein is that as the other center, and I don't know, I mean, he'll see plenty of playing time, so it's not super accurate to call him the other center, but he's behind Chet Holmgren in the pecking order overall. He is Jakob Poeltl. Like they are terrifyingly similar in overall fantasy appeal and just like what they do on a basketball court. Where did Poeltl finish this year? He was number 43, 14.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, 2.4 defensive stats, 63-67 splits. Chet Holmgren was number 48 this year on 15 points and 8. Wait, I was doing Hartenstein, not Holmgren. Although Holmgren you could throw in there as well. Hartenstein was 11 points, 11 rebounds. So 3 fewer points, 1.5 rebounds more. Both those guys had between 2.8 and 4 assists. Hartenstein 1.9 defensive stats, Poeltl 2.4. That's why he was ahead. Jakob wins field goal percent by 3. And Hartenstein wins free throw percent. Actually, they were remarkably similar this year in that one. So the point I'm making there is, I think either one of those guys will be fine if you're looking to draft a center in that spot. I think you're going to get a pretty similar fantasy profile between the two. I don't know that one is necessarily much safer than the other. I would argue that Poeltl probably has the higher upside if we think Toronto's going to play to win some games this year, and I think they do, Poeltl probably sees higher minutes per game. So maybe that's not higher upside. Maybe that's just higher floor. But both these guys are going to be decent centers. They're probably going to end up somewhere between 45 and 75 in overall rank. And they probably belong more towards the back end of what I refer to as the Jared Allen corridor on these shows, which is all the centers that go between 35 and 70. So these two guys are more towards the back end of that. I think they're going to be relatively safe. I don't know why I'm talking about Poeltl so much. We're not on the Raptors today. We're on the Thunder. But that to me is what Hartenstein is. And probably, if you're thinking like, oh, well, Chet missed a lot of time this last year, Isaiah was perfectly fine when Chet was in and when Chet was out. It wasn't that big of a difference. He got his value in slightly different ways. Now let's get into the Thunder that are a little bit more fringy. Those are the 4 guys that are going to get drafted everywhere. The Fringe 3 Thunder. And we're going to start with the one that I like the least, and that's Lu Dort, whose fantasy game just doesn't translate. He's a low field goal percent guy who chucks 3-pointers, who feels like he should get 2 steals a game, but he gets 1. It just doesn't translate the way that you want it to. He averaged 10 points, 4 boards, a steal, half a block, and 2.5 3-pointers this last year on bad both percentages, although free throw is usually a little bit better than that. That put Lu Dort, what was the number there? 117 in 9-cat. So he was like borderline, but the 0.7 turnovers also played a pretty good size role in that. I don't know. I mean, like the way that Lu Dort maybe has value is if Shai has to miss a bunch of time and there's 22 extra shots just sitting in the bucket and he might take 2 or 3 of them. And if Lu Dort took 10 shots a game, he would be playable in 9 category leagues, but it just doesn't feel like that's in the cards. I mean, he got He took 14 shots a game back in 2021, 2022. He averaged 17 points a game that year. They don't want him up in that neighborhood. 11.8 shots per game the next year when he shot a terrible 39%. Like, there are times where he's close. He was close this year, but I mean, that's 3-and-D and barely 3-and-D. And I don't think that I'm drafting Lu Dort because there's just no upside at all with him. It's all you're fully hunting floor. Remember, by the way, he also got off to an insane start. Lu Dort started the year as like a top 60 guy for a month, and then to no one's surprise, the wheels kind of came off after that. Not all the way off, but he's more like top 140 down the stretch. He's just not. This is just an uninspiring fantasy player. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on him. You guys don't need me to tell you not to draft Lu Dort. You're not going to do it because he got all the minutes basically he could handle, and it still wasn't there. Instead, I would ask you guys to focus on two players, Alex Caruso and Cason Wallace, who I just flashed up on the screen, both of them on YouTube, and I don't know which one to actually put up there, and I don't think I have the technological know-how to put them both on the screen. But these guys are interchangeably delightful 9-category, low turnover, 3-and-D type of guys. Alex Caruso has all the upside in the universe, but they played him 19 minutes a game this year because they wanted him healthy for what, to no one's surprise, turned out to be an awesome postseason run. He was racking up minutes in the playoffs like they were going out of style. I think he was like, he had some records of like bench players to score 20 points in under 28 minutes or something like that. And he did it. And he got, the dude was averaging like 2 to 3 steals per game during their playoff run. Alex Caruso was flat out amazing, but this is why they didn't play him much during the regular season. They just wanted to make sure he was healthy to go buck wild in the playoffs. I hate it because I drafted Caruso near 100 in a couple of spots, and it didn't work. Now, admittedly, his 9-cat ranking this year was 115. You could look at that, and just like with Lu Dort, you could be like, hey, that was actually like 9-cat playable, but not really. He missed 28 games. Lu Dort only missed 11. Caruso had 1.6 steals, so you got your D, and 0.6 blocks, 2.2 defensive stats in 19 minutes a night. His percentages were better than Lu Dort. Turnovers like Lu were equally low, but 7 points, 3 boards, 2.5 assists. Like, those aren't even on the radar, and only 1.13 pointers. We need Caruso to get to like 22 minutes a game, and I don't know if he's going to get there. The Thunder are going to be even more inclined this coming year to use their depth because they had such a long playoff run. So while I'd love to tell you, you got to draft Alex Caruso, you don't. You don't. There's no guarantee at all that he's going to play 25 minutes a night this coming year because they have Dort and because they have Cason Wallace and because they have, the list goes on and on. Is Kenrich Williams still on the teams? He's still out there. Other Jaylen Williams. Isaiah Joe is still floating around out there. I think they lose... Nope. He's still there. Aaron Wiggins is still there. They have 1,000 wings that they will play before they give Alex Caruso the number of minutes it would take to hurt him. I love Alex Caruso's fantasy game. You guys know I love it. But I'm also a pragmatic fellow. And so I can't come on here and tell you guys you need to draft Alex Caruso because I don't think they're going to give him any more minutes this year in the regular season than they gave him last year. 20 minutes is what they're trying to keep him at. He's just a weapon. They throw out there for 20 minutes. They're like, dude, play your hardest for 20. We're going to get you out of here before you get hurt. If somebody says something during the run-up to the season that makes me rethink that, I will be the first person on earth to change my tune here because you know how much I want to get him on my team. I want any reason at all to trust Alex Caruso this coming year, but I don't have it. What we saw last year was the perfect plan executed by the Thunder of playing him just enough to keep him warm and learn how to play with his teammates, but not enough so that he was hurt come playoff time. And he played a crap ton of minutes in the postseason. On the flip side, it does kind of feel like Cason Wallace has solidified himself as like the other guy with the starting group, because down the stretch, final 30 games this last year, Cason Wallace played 28 minutes a night. He was, with a lower shot blocking upside, he was what we wanted Alex Caruso to be. 10.5 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, 1.8 steals, 0.4 blocks. Both percentages were good. 1.5 3-pointers. He did it in 28 minutes. Caruso could do that in 22 with blocking, with the shot blocking. Wallace requires more. But if Cason Wallace is going to get 28 minutes a night, then he does belong on fantasy teams. Mostly for the defense, but also because he was giving you all that while actually helping your percentages. That's kind of an unusual twist. The good news on these guys, and these guys meaning Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso. Again, I don't want Lou Dort on my fantasy team. The good news is you're not going to have to spend draft capital on any of them. Shai, you're going to have to draft at the beginning of the first round. Jaylen Williams, you're going to have to draft in the second round. Chet Holmgren, I'm assuming you're going to have to draft in the third. Hartenstein, you're probably going to have to get in the 5th or 6th, is my guess. I doubt he slides to the 7th. That would be very surprising. These guys are going to be going at the end of drafts, if at all. And I would feel quite comfortable, because usually we get into our flyers, our favorite sleeper picks, basically, the first bucket of flyer types by like pick 112, beginning, middle of the 10th round. Once you get through that first chunk of 5 or 6 flyers and you're past pick 120, I see no reason why not. Like, Cason Wallace makes perfect sense in that 125 range. Caruso, maybe like your very last, your 13th rounder, in case they do give him 23 minutes a night. But Wallace looks like he's going to get minutes. He played a bunch of minutes at the end of the regular season. His minutes in the postseason were a little bit more wonky, mostly because of Alex Caruso. But I think that probably flips back come regular season. But man, this is really, to me, this is a big thing that we need to be paying attention to on the Thunder. All this other stuff we've talked about today is a little bit fluff. It's a little bit fluff because we kind of know what these guys are going to be, or at least we have a decent idea of it. The Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso dynamic during this coming regular season, to me, is the only interesting fantasy note on the Thunder. Right now, I think the Thunder go back to a lot of Cason Wallace and keeping Caruso fresh. But if that shows even the tiniest inkling of flipping, then you got to go full bore into Caruso. But I don't think that's on the horizon. They kept him healthy. It worked perfectly. Why wouldn't they do the same thing again? What do you think Caruso's going to be like? I demand to play 24 minutes a game during the regular season because I didn't like this title run. Psh. Nah, man. He got exactly what he needed too. Especially, if he was annoyed about it this year and then everything worked out perfectly and he won a title and he got to play all the minutes he could handle in the postseason, I don't see him complaining either. So assume it's going to be Cason Wallace with your 12th or 13th round pick, but we'll keep an eye on this thing. We'll listen. We'll, read the tea leaves, listen to all the news outlets. We'll read all the beat writers. We'll watch preseason. If there's any sign of Caruso getting a consistent 22 minutes and that chopping 2 or 3 minutes off of Wallace, flip it on a dime. Speaking of dimes, that actually doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go have lunch. I hope you guys will as well. I'm Dan Bespers. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Hit that subscribe button on the way out no matter how you're taking in the content. Find me on social at Dan Bespers or at Old Man Squad. Great show dropping, I think, right before mine if you missed it. Noah and Matt Lawson doing the work again. Doing work. Consensus Dynasty ranks. If you like Dynasty, man, those guys are absolutely dominating right now. Love you all. Thanks for making Old Man Squad bigger every day, even in the dead of the offseason. I'll see you guys with another team breakdown tomorrow. So long for now.